You're listening to Ayrshire Insights with Elliot Boyce.
This week, it's Eddie Fraser, Chief Executive of East Ayrshire Council.
Welcome back to Ayrshire Insights with me, Elliot Boyce. In this week's Local Legend Spotlight, we are going behind the bureaucracy and finding out what it's like to run a local authority. I'm delighted to welcome the Chief Exec of East Ayrshire Council, Eddie Fraser. Eddie, a massive thanks for coming on the show today.
Afternoon, Elliot. Great to be here.
So before we find out about how it all started, we want to know a little bit more about you. So, are you a football or rugby man?
Lightly football now. In my younger days it would have been rugby, but lightly football now.
iPhone or Android?
All iPhones.
And are you a dog or cat guy?
Oh, I've not got any pets, but lightly dog.
Lightly dog. There we go. So we're going to find out a lot more about you. Got to know a little bit about you there, but a lot more about you very, very soon, and finding out how you grew up and how you became the Chief Exec of East Ayrshire Council.
You're listening to Ayrshire Insights with Elliot Boyce.
This week, it's Eddie Fraser, Chief Executive of East Ayrshire Council.
So Eddie, where did you grow up?
So I was born in my granny's back room in Howwood Road scheme in Johnston. I grew up in Elderslie, where I still stay. Mother granny had a tenement, and as each of the family got married, you know, they got a house in the tenement. So I actually grew up in a tenement with my granny and my cousins and everything all on it, but me in Elderslie. I'm still in Elderslie, still stayed in the corner from my mum.
Brilliant. Now, what was your first ever job?
So while I was at school, I worked in the local garage, you know, serving petrol and washing cars. So that was my first job. And for that, you know, my first real job, I suppose, was kind of after my first time at university. So I'd went to university. My dad was a motor mechanic with the post office. My mum was a spool setter with Stoddards. And so I didn't really know a whole lot of different jobs. So when I went to university first time, I went there and I'd done a kind of engineering degree. And when I left there, it didn't go well for me, and I ended up doing kind of labouring jobs. So my first real job, if you call that, ended up being kind of labouring jobs.
Brilliant. Now, obviously, it's a massive journey to the Chief Executive of East Ayrshire Council. How did you go from where you started, kind of right at the bottom end of the chain, as you mentioned earlier, to now?
So, I mean, I came into local authority about 40 years ago. At the lowest grade you can join, the then Strathclyde Regional Council, and part of that was going round houses in Fergusley Park scheme, talking to folk about their health and any way we could help them. And I slowly worked my way through. I've been at every grade in the council, from the lowest grade in the council to the top, took every opportunity I could to, you know, get training and move on. And 27 years ago, came here to Ayrshire to join here. Came from Glasgow for a few years lately, thinking going back, and I'm still here. I love it.
So did you always have dreams of making it to the top, or did it just naturally progress that way?
It just absolutely progressed that way. I think what happens is you're in a job and you're enjoying your job, but you see how things can be done a bit differently and how you could help that be different, and that's, you start to move on up the chain in doing that. So no, there's been no big career plan to become a chief exec. That just happened.
And how long have you been in the job?
So I've been chief exec now for about 4.5 years in East Ayrshire. Before that, I was director of health and care in East Ayrshire, with some responsibilities for Pan Ayrshire. And particularly through the pandemic, that was tough.
Absolutely. So your trade, so to speak, in the council was kind of social services and social work, and
yep.
Naturally just progressed from that into the current role.
Yeah, so even in social work, social care, I think everybody always saw me as Mr. Community Planning, because I always got that people's lives really mattered around where they lived, you know, in terms of housing and, you know, the environment as well. So it was actually quite a straightforward progression for me for that. I think likely the biggest surprise when I moved over was getting engaged with local business, because that's an area I hadn't done, and that's been absolutely fantastic. I've really enjoyed being out and meeting lots of local business folk who have got a huge heart and want to give back to the community.
I think that's something that we're really big on here, especially with this show with Ayrshire Insights, and we're bringing on local business and spotlighting them on the show. I think it's amazing to see just the amount of business and what comes here in Ayrshire. I'm sure as you're going round and about and seeing different businesses, actually where we met down at Emergency One, I mean, it's an amazing story to what actually happens.
It It's absolutely amazing. Obviously Emergency One is fantastic, making about 2/3 of the fire engines in the UK out of Cumnock. We've got Scott seats that are making all sorts of seats for military boats. We've got Macallan's bagpipes, the biggest bagpipe maker in the world. We've got Lochhaven up in Sturton, who makes every Harry Potter jumper that you buy at Universal Studios in Florida. There are all sorts of local businesses here that I just don't think we trumpet loud enough about what we do here in Ayrshire.
We don't really shout about it, but it is amazing what's around about. Now, it's a massive story in what you do as the Chief Executive of East Ayrshire Council, even just catching up with you off air there, even down to presidential visits and getting involved with that. So we're going to find out all about what it's like running East Ayrshire Council, and we're also going to take some questions from the listeners. So in the job that you're in, I'm pretty sure that the public engagement is a massive part of the job.
Absolutely. And I enjoy it every time.
You're listening to Ayrshire Insights with Elliot Boyce.
This week, it's Eddie Fraser, Chief Executive of East Ayrshire Council.
Right, we are still with Eddie Fraser, the Chief Exec of East Ayrshire, and we've heard about the early days. Now let's talk about what it's like running a local authority right here in Ayrshire. So Eddie, as the largest employer in East Ayrshire, what would you say the hardest part of the job is?
So for me, the hardest part of the job is balancing priorities. So we need to look at what needs to be done right now, and we need to plan for the future. We need to look across the different services. Some folk who've got children who would think education's the biggest thing. Other folk who've got elderly relatives would think social care. We all think the roads are a priority. So it's balancing priorities all the time is the bit that really is the hardest part.
Now, throughout your career, I'm sure you've had some proud moments. What's up there with your proudest moment?
There's some different proudest moments I can think of. Fairly recently, I was in a primary school. I was down in Darvel, and we were walking around with some young folk who were talking about rights, respect in school. And really, the young folk had such sets of values that you see in there that had clearly come through their families and through education, that it just lifts your heart for that. And I could get right through to, I was talking with a mum who had been in recovery from addiction, and she got into work. And her biggest thing for her was saying about how her boy or her son was really proud of her, of what she'd done. So they're things that really, really lift you. And I could go to the other extreme. Some of the stuff we've done in East Ayrshire has been quite innovative. And I've been able to stand in front of, and this is scary, thousands of people at the NHS conference and different things like that, and tell the story of what we've been doing there. So there are loads of different things that you feel really you're proud of when you're doing them.
And do you think the fact that you've grown up through the social services element, you've dealt with real people throughout your career, that stood you in good stead in your current position?
I think it definitely has, and I think it doesn't need to be the social services part. It's about that contact with people who are out there every day. So one of my jobs going back was I was responsible directly for all the personal carers. So over 600 of my 6,700 staff are personal carers, and actually speaking to them and hearing the compassion that they have gone out with the rest of the public, it just drives things through. So yeah, it does.
Now, as you can imagine, we've had a lot of contact regarding this interview, because I think at the end of the day, you're saying about balancing priorities, but as a person within the local authority, everyone's got what they think their priorities is, and I think it would be good to understand where your decisions come from. But one of the big things that people want to know, and I'm very interested as well, is what is the difference between you as Chief Executive and the leader of the council? So you've got your elected members and yourself as Chief Exec. Who's actually in charge?
So first of all, I'm obviously much more handsome than Jiggy, so that would be the first thing. So there are a couple of different things. My job has got two parts to it. The first one is I need to give best professional advice to the councillors. So myself and the other, senior officers within the council, that's our job. We give them advice about policy. The councillors take decisions then, around that, and then it flips back to us that I need to then deliver it, whatever the councillors have done. So the councillor's job is to take decisions over policy and have oversight over us. They're kind of our governance, in terms of that. So that's where I am.
And how do you get on with your elected members?
We got on really, really well. The elected members come from our local communities. They understand local communities. They got a different perspective on things from us, at times as officers. And it's really good that they're pretty mature in terms of sitting in a room and actually talking things through about what's best for the communities of East Ayrshire. So in recent years, we've kind of managed to put through, unified budgets. We've not got into big fights over that because we've done the talking, first. And then obviously there is politics, but that's okay in terms of that, making sure there are a balance of priorities.
Now, Keith's been in touch and he's said there's different political parties can be in charge, but what happens if you don't agree with their decisions? So you've obviously got the politics side where you're not politics at all. You're there to deliver a service, but when different policies come in politics, how do you manage that?
So again, back to that bit about, we'll quite often get things that come to us, nationally, and our job is to give advice to the councillors about what we can do with that. The councillors will take the decisions, and if the councillors take a decision, as long as their decision is a legal decision, then it's my job to implement that. It's not my job to second guess the councillors. That's what they're elected by the public to do.
So there is a clear differential. You're not in disagreement when it goes to vote. They make a decision. You then look, as long as it's within the law, you will then deliver on that.
Absolutely.
Now, you mentioned roads. I don't know why you did that, because I've now got a flood of roads as things come through. So I've got one here that says, I've asked my councillor to fix a pothole. She says she's asked Ayrshire Roads Alliance to fix it, but it's still not done yet. Can a councillor not just insist that Ayrshire Roads Alliance do it immediately?
So the easy answer to this, that is definitely not. There is a code of conduct for councillors and they're not allowed to get involved directly in operational decision making, so they can't. What we do is we bring a programme of roads to the councillors. So Ayrshire Roads Alliance do obviously for both South Ayrshire and East Ayrshire, and they'll bring a programme of roads improvements to the councillors to get signed off, and then delivery goes back to Ayrshire Roads Alliance to do. I get people's frustrations around this, but there's almost someone in every second street got a frustration, and it's how you balance, all that and get it right for everybody.
Now, we've had a number of people come in as well and questioning the things about Ayrshire Roads Alliance. They've kind of hit the headlines recently, locally, and I think it's been down to the fact of the new pavement parking, where people are getting fined for parking in their street. Is that just a policy again that you've just have to deliver on?
It's law, yeah. So that was passed. The Scottish Parliament passed a law that basically said, that people shouldn't park in pavements to allow access for things like prams and wheelchairs and things like that, unless the pavement's so wide that you're actually able to do it. So we're at the stage of implementing, a law around that, and that's. So that's, but we're at implementation, and hopefully we try and do it as sensibly as we can.
Now, another listener has been in touch, Tony Tumulty from Kilmarnock, and he's come in and said that he feels totally let down that the Palace Theatre has been shut for over 2 years and major work still hasn't started. He was a regular at the Palace Theatre, loved the buzz of going to the theatre, but this has been denied to so many patrons. A new purpose-built theatre could have been built by now. The theatre opening in 3 years doesn't excite me. He feels totally let down.
So first of all, the fact that we've been able to attract significant monies to redevelop the Grand Hall Palace Theatre, so we're getting £20 million in off the UK government, and the council are likely going to have to put another 10 million plus to that to do it, and this is about our future, and this is about getting it right and making sure we do that. I again understand the frustrations. Some of it has been really frustrating for us in terms of how you get the financial packages together, how you do planning. But other bits that folk are now seeing is that actually to get the programme of works, you need to get inside the building and actually do all sorts of testing and destructive testing inside to see what we need to do. So there's been a lot of work going on inside it to do it. But yeah, I get how long it's going to be shut. Hopefully what we get at the other end of it is something that will last us another 100 years and be a real attraction to Kilmarnock.
It's an amazing place, and I've got a personal reflection from it. Back in 2018, I put on my first concert, and there we had the Time Frequency dance concert, sold out, an amazing venue, an amazing thing for Kilmarnock. So it'll be great to see it when it gets to the other side. Now, Eddie, we've had a number of questions through, as we said, but only so much time to try and get through them all. So I appreciate it. One big thing that has come through is council tax. As you can imagine, people want to know what's happening with our council tax. So see, we've had a message here from Leslie, and she said, with our council tax, does the money directly go to East Ayrshire, or does it go into a bigger pot?
The money for council tax comes directly to East Ayrshire. So for every 1% that the council tax goes up, about £700,000 comes directly to us here in East Ayrshire. So that's one of the flexibilities that we have. Obviously, there was a number of years that nationally there was a council tax freeze, and that did take away from local flexibilities. But last year we were able to raise it. And by doing that, we can be very open then in what we're saying with it. So without opening more cans of worms, I'm sure I will, we put 1% in, like for civic pride, antisocial behaviour. So these are things that we know are really important to communities, and therefore you can actually use flexibility of council tax to do something about that.
So for every 1%, when you are getting the issues through that people rightly have concerns with, whether it's bin collection, whether it's teacher numbers, whether it's the roads across Ayrshire and East Ayrshire specifically, for every 1% that goes up, there's a £700,000 impact to the council.
There is, and remembering that, is we are the council and we deliver these services, but we're a massive business as well. So my annual budget is £485 million. We employ 6,700 people. So it's a big business that we're running to actually deliver all those services.
An amazing job, and also something that must be really challenging, balancing it all and trying to give what's right to you or to the people of East Ayrshire, whilst reflecting the fact that unfortunately things are expensive. Wage rises do come in. People want that side of it, but the money has to come from somewhere.
Yep, so the wage rises, are negotiated nationally. We are still a council who delivers a lot, and so that means that nearly all that is local people that are getting the wage rises, and local people who spend money locally, and will continue to live here. We've got a high proportion of our staff live in East Ayrshire.
So the wage rises directly impact in Ayrshire in a positive way.
Yep.
Now streaming
Ayrshire Insights, hosted by Elliot Boyce.
This is Now Ayrshire Radio.
Now it's time to talk community, charity and Ayrshire Pride, but before we do that, listeners have been in touch and let me know their weekly bargain. Well, they've let us know what they've managed to get for a tenner or less this week. So the question with you, Eddie, what is your bargain of the week that you've got for a tenner or less?
Say two things. So the first one is my reader specs, because I can do it absolutely totally blind without them, and the second one is I'm terrible for getting in the shops and picking up the yellow label big roasts of meat and things like that. So a bit of beef or a bit of lamb would be quite a normal one for me to pick up.
So you're a bargain hunter?
Absolutely.
Brilliant. Right, okay, so back to you. As the CEO of East Ayrshire Council, the local community is what you're all about. What does that local feeling mean to you? So here at Now Ayrshire Radio, our tagline is that local feeling. What does that mean to you? So
I think I touched on earlier, I come down 27 years ago to Ayrshire thinking I would be staying a few years, and here I still am, and I absolutely love working in the place. It can be, down in our former mining towns. It can be post-industrial up in Kilmarnock. As people, it is about people. It's a beautiful place that we live in, and I don't think we appreciate, how beautiful it is. Sometimes I'll drive across from Dalmellington to Cumnock or New Cumnock, and actually it's just stunning, where you are there. So it's a beautiful place, and the people here, I love that the vast majority of people here are just straightforward. They just tell you what you think, and I've got a thick skin. I'm okay with that, and actually it gives you a really good grounding about what they want.
No airs or graces, straight to the point.
Absolutely.
Right, do you have any personal links to the community?
So, I as I say, I live in Renfrewshire, so but I came here when I was first of all a trainee social worker, so way before I came to actually work permanently. I did my training actually in Stewarton, so I was a wee shop it was in Stewarton that they done the training. It's a hairdressers, I think now, but I've also got links to community in different ways. So I've got an elderly mum who lives round the corner from me. I've got, my son who's got learning disabilities and autism. So you link to different communities, you actually have an empathy with people, and lots of the things that people come and talk to you about, you understand, because
you're living it.
You're not just a chief exec, you're a real person, too. And actually, so I think what I've got at times is a real empathy and understanding of what people are feeling.
So the community spirit, I think here in Ayrshire we do have a really unique community spirit. It was very big even with the start of Now Ayrshire Radio, that everybody rallies round about you because they want to see Ayrshire doing well. They're not interested in what's happening up the road, it's what's going on here in Ayrshire. What's your views on the people of Ayrshire and Ayrshire as a whole, the togetherness that we've got?
I think increasingly I see that across the three councils. Increasingly, we're at a point of saying whether work comes to Kilmarnock, whether it's Prestwick or whether it's Irvine, people from across Ayrshire, do that. We get that, folk think they come from Ayrshire. They don't come from East, South or North Ayrshire. They're almost just constructs for us to deliver for local people. So I think definitely that Ayrshire feeling is really positive. I think we can be better. As East Ayrshire, like we're only a 40th of Scotland, if we're Ayrshire together, we're the size of Fife, etc., and we can have a louder voice, and I think we should stick together as much of that as we can.
Is there more collaboration amongst the three Ayrshires now, or is there starting to get that bit more collab?
There definitely more collaboration across the three Ayrshires just now. So things like, the Ayrshire Growth Deal, a joint economic strategy, things like this are starting to help us do that. Our colleagues, in Ayrshire College, the police, fire and rescue, health, they all work pan-Ayrshire. So actually we can build around some of the things that they do as well.
Now, Eddie, what we want to find out is what's next and what's coming up for East Ayrshire and for you as a whole.
You're listening to Ayrshire Insights with Elliot Boyce.
This week, it's Eddie Fraser, Chief Executive of East Ayrshire Council.
So, Eddie, I don't want you to think about it. We're going to do a game called 5 Fast Ones, right? Don't think about it, just shout out the first answer that comes into your head. Are you ready to play?
Yep.
Right, okay, let's go. Your favourite takeaway?
Pizza.
Song that always lifts your mood? Okay, we'll come back to that one, right? I caught you off guard there. Best thing about Ayrshire?
Just the people.
Weirdest moment at work?
So my weirdest moment fairly recently is I was tap dancing with folk with learning disability up on a stage in Sturton. So that was my weirdest recently.
And who plays you in a movie of your life?
It would definitely be Rapsy.
Rapsy. No, I've noted that one, right. Thanks for playing 5 Fast Ones. We get 4 out of 5 there, so we're going to take that. Now, Eddie, we've spoken about your early days. We've understood what happened at the early part of your career, right through to the current issues that listeners had been in touch, and you've given insight into that, and also a little bit about you and what it's like running a local authority, a massive responsibility, as you'd mentioned, massive budget, massive amount of staff, and a massive impact to the community. But now it's all about the future. So what's up next for you? What's up next for the future of East Ayrshire, or all the Ayrshires in that collaboration as well?
So a couple of things. I'm already thinking forward to 2027. In 2027 we'll have our next elections for our councillors and across all local authorities in East Ayrshire. And in planning for that, we want to go out through 2026 and do a lot of engagement so we can give best professional advice to the new councillors when come in. So we're already thinking of that just now on one level. But it's not to say we do nothing in between. So in between, some of the things that the councillors have asked to do is really focus on employability. So the councillors have put aside £2.5 million a year over the next 3 years to support apprenticeships and support work. And so a big part of our job was to make sure we make absolutely the best use of that for our folk here in Ayrshire. The other areas that we'll be looking at is around child poverty. So that's a huge impact on us. So again, things like, we've put in more subsidised school meals. We've seen the number of people who pay for school meals in secondary schools double with that, which is fantastic in terms of that. We're working with some of our third sector partners in terms of the quality government programme Fairer Futures, and we have doubled the money that goes into there. So we're all down in Cubnock, Centre Stage in Kilmarnock, and his own down in Dalmellington. So we're working really hard, both about looking to the future and delivering today.
Amazing. It's all about the forward plan and looking through. What's next for you? How long do you see yourself still with East Ayrshire in your current role?
I've got no intentions of going anywhere. I'm certainly not saying that if my wife's listening, she would have a list of things for me to do. So no, I'm really enjoying my work. I love getting out and about and speaking to folks. So going nowhere shortly.
Now, talking about something that was very, very recent, and I think as a resident in South Ayrshire and somebody who lives just next to the airport, I was incredibly proud to see the scale of operation which was delivered. Now, taking political views to the side, for me, it's the presidential visit, regardless of your thoughts on Donald Trump, good or bad. I think the big thing for me was just how Ayrshire managed to deliver such a successful operation. It was quite remarkable. Was that something you were involved with?
Yep, it's something you become involved in at a couple of different levels. So obviously we oversee Ayrshire Roads Alliance that covers both South and East Ayrshire. So there's a level of being involved there. They're also at a national level. You can take it. There's a lot of planning involved in this. So I was involved at national level in planning, and also then bringing that down to just an Ayrshire level. Colleagues in South Ayrshire were without a doubt much more heavily involved with us. Hosted a whole lot of police across the different areas of South Ayrshire, but we do work together, and we do resilience planning together, and there were several of the meetings that I led in terms of how us coming together for that. An
amazing achievement for Ayrshire, and I think it certainly puts us on the map as well. I mean, worldwide news. At the bottom of my street, you saw the motorcade going by, and then I turned round and looked at Sky News, and there was the bottom of my street. It's an amazing part of coming to Ayrshire.
It absolutely is, and hopefully, any opportunity. I mean, last year we had the Open, obviously at Troon as well. I think every opportunity we get to actually see, the beauty of Ayrshire and draw people to us is fantastic.
Are you actively bidding for anything? So, obviously, in terms of events, how does it work? Do people come to you, or do we go out and look for things to bring to Ayrshire?
It's a bit of both, so when you see opportunities, you'll go for it. So for things like, the Commonwealth Games will be coming up in Glasgow, we'll be out there and talking to different countries about, so where are they going to be, where are they going to be hosted, and try and bring them down to, so you can get an engagement, around that way.
Is it amazing, I think, to look at what we can do here in Ayrshire? You spoke earlier about the things round about is the scenes of the scenic route, and if you go round and down Cumnock to Mellington, amazing views. There's also massive spaces. I mean, right here in Auchincruve, somewhere that is right in your doorstep, and only up until I started actually working at the radio I'd never been. And then you go down walks with dogs and stuff. It's an amazing place just here, and there's so many places like that here in Ayrshire.
They're absolutely, everywhere. I mean, I was up in Largs last night, had my tea in the 3 Reasons in Largs last night, and just walking back to the cars, the parks and that are there are just stunning, and we have them all over Ayrshire. It really is a beautiful place, and lots of space for folk to get out and about.
If you were to choose one thing for Ayrshire that you would like to see happening more, what would it be?
It has to be work. I mean, there's no doubt about it for me. We need to get, I was seeing, and I understand there are different reasons for this, but around Loch Lomond they were saying, they didn't want a flamingo land or that. I would take a flamingo land in one of the open cast sites, that we had there, and I seen, the Borders, we're going to get a new theme park there. So it's something on scale for work. Because one of the big issues for us is depopulation, and that's a whole other thing to go into. But our population in the south of East Ayrshire is really shrinking. It's growing in the north, and it becomes a real challenge for us about how we sustain small local communities. And that is similar in different parts, of Ayrshire, sustaining small local communities. And that's going to be one of our big challenges, how we do that. And I think we do that through work and housing.
And how do you see in terms of opportunities? Do you think there's plenty of opportunities? I mean, looking, I know right enough from Emergency One's perspective in Cumnock, and a massive employer in that area, somewhere, an old mining village, you've got a lot of people, a lot of community, lion's share of people from Cumnock alone. Do you think there's enough opportunities for people round about? We'll specifically mention East Ayrshire.
I think there are opportunities, but I think we also need infrastructure. You know, so for us, we all want to think the Belfield roundabout needs more investment in terms of that. We bid for that. We talk about, you know, our railways as well. So I think part of the opportunity, we need support as well in terms of making sure there's a good infrastructure so that people can get around properly.
Amazing. And Eddie, listen, a massive thank you for giving up your Sunday and coming on the show. I think it's been a massive, great show for me, and it'll be really good for the podcast to listen back, but also for the people of Ayrshire and the listeners to understand what it's like being a Chief Executive of East Ayrshire Council and being able to ask the questions that are on your head. But a massive thanks for coming on.
Thanks very much. It's been really good to be here, El.
This is the Ayrshire Insights podcast.
Never miss an episode. Hit subscribe now.